Dean and Andy, always a pleasure. Thanks to have you guys back here on the live desk. Really quickly, before we get into quite a bit of content of regarding sports, you know, we want to talk a little bit about the Masters, a little bit of a recap. Rory McIlroy taking home his first green jacket. And I don't want to toot my own horn or anything here, but Andy and I kind of predicted this a little bit last week. Andy, when you were watching the Masters, I mean, kind of felt that whole thing, even when Rory was kind of falling back a little bit, you were still kind of confident in your pick?
Yeah, I mean, it was the way that he started out on Sunday. It was hard to. I mean, well, the way he started wasn't great, but then he ended up getting up by 4 strokes, I think it was, to like 9. So yeah, I felt pretty confident then that if it wasn't now, when was it ever going to be?
Right.
And he still found a way to make it as close as possible. But yeah, I still overall felt confident. Like the first day when he double bogeyed twice on the back, that was when it kind of started to get like, oh boy, is he just gonna fall off completely? The way he came back the second day, I knew he was gonna be at least in the top 3, like going down to the end. So felt relatively confident in it. Who did you have? I guess going in.
If I was here, I would have picked Rory.
Yeah. Okay. You could say that now.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fair if you want.
I can say that now, but it is the truth. I really thought that coming into the Masters, Rory was playing really, really well, and he had everything going for him. You know, obviously, the double bogeys hurt him the first day, but he kind of regrouped and came back. And a quick story from that final round. So I was flying back from a cruise from Houston, and Delta had live TV on the plane. So I literally got to watch the entire final round on the plane. However, 18th hole, Rory chips out of the sand, gets it close. People are getting off the plane, and it froze on the screen.
Oh my gosh.
So luckily, then apparently the feed was ahead or behind, and so this lady next to me had it on her phone, and she turns to me and she says, "He missed the putt." and I go, "What?" She's like, "He missed the putt. They're going to a playoff."
Oh
and
my
I was
gosh.
like, "Are you kidding me? This is crazy." So then we're going down to baggage claim. I'm stopping at every little bar restaurant and seeing, you know, the playoff kind of start and the drives and the second shots. So we're on the elevator, and I look to my left, and this guy had a phone, and he was watching it live. And I said, can I please watch this last putt by Rory?
Please.
And I'm like, please make it. And he made it, and I was super happy and celebrated with my daughter. And so yeah, really, really happy for Rory to complete, you know, just a historic achievement.
Yeah, the career Grand Slam, awesome to get. I think golf is one of those sports where like you get kind of connected if you follow it at all. Like you can be connected to multiple players. You don't just have to be a fan of, you know, one team or one player or whatever. You can be a fan of a lot of people. Like it was, I don't think I've ever like watched an event where I felt so much pain for somebody when he missed that 18th putt, and then was so happy for him when he got that, because that was pure emotion. I mean, he's been carrying that with himself since 2014 because he won so many of the majors like right out the gate, and he was one of the better golfers at that time. And it's always been, when is he going to get it done? Is he ever going to get it done? And I think over the last couple of years, he's been playing some of the better golf he has in a while, and he's been able to get himself back on the right side of things. And yeah, it was awesome to see Rory get it done.
And even just seeing his raw emotions, honestly, just the crying and the tears flowing, just how happy he was. I mean, that itself was kind of worth the watch, definitely.
Yeah, and you know, listening to the press conference, you know, he said he was nervous. You know, you know, there's so much pressure on him to kind of get that done. And you know, you could see some of the nerves with some of the shots that he had, and some of the miscues he had. But then he would recover, you know, with an incredible shot to make birdie. And you know, it's just kind of an up and down round. But you could tell that he was just super nervous, and there was so much pressure on him to get it done. You know, in that tournament.
And extremely tough for Justin Rose too.
Yeah.
I mean, he
played
down,
so well.
10 down on the day, and you don't win. I mean, that may have been maybe the best final day round ever at the Masters, and he didn't get the job done. So that's crazy. Like, I mean, I'm sure once it went to the playoff, he was like, oh my gosh. And those two have been close, like coming up, like as in like friends.
Yep.
And it's just insane. And I think Rory said afterwards in the press conference that those two had like dinner together on Tuesday, and they never had really done that before. I guess at the Masters, and then they ended up being the final two in that round. So I wanted to just give a quick shout out to Justin Rose, because what a performance from him this week. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Right.
He's also been somebody who's been working pretty hard to get back to being someone who can compete at the top. So
if you look at the last major, he finished runner up in the last major that they had as well.
Yep.
So he's been playing well, you know, here in the kind of the twilight of his career.
No doubt.
Yeah. Well, from one winner in Rory McIlroy to another winner, the Western Michigan University hockey team took home the national championship. That is the first national championship for the university since 1965 when the cross-country team actually did it. So it's been a long time coming, a super memorable season, super awesome to, I had not tuned into much college hockey, if any college hockey this season, but definitely tuned into the Frozen Four games, and those were just some of the most electric feeling. You could feel it through the TV, just the passion surrounding not only the fans, but also the teams that were on the ice themselves. I mean, what do you make of this kind of historic run for Western Michigan and the Broncos?
I think Western Michigan deserves a lot of credit. Again, if you saw it out there on Twitter, I gave a quick quote because I am a Chippewa. But I couldn't be more happy for some of my friends that went to that school and the fans of the community, because I've loved covering West Michigan, so it was pretty cool to see them get the job done. And I think Western's student section deserves a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
I mean, they made a lot of noise on social media. Everybody was like, "Wow, the student section's for real. Like, there's this many people there." I'm trying to think of what they call themselves. Do you remember the name?
Is it something to do with Broncos?
Lawson Lunatics. That's the name.
That's a great name for a fan base.
It really is, and that's why they're so passionate. And they have so many cheers. I mean, something that we definitely can't say in this air. But they're a really, really fun fan base to be around. Sometimes even as a Central Michigan grad. So yeah, I was happy to see them get it done. Wouldn't have wanted it to be anybody else once it got to that point. So it was awesome.
Yeah, just the double overtime game was just so exciting, right? And that's the best thing about playoff hockey. Just those game-winning goals, and there's so much goes.
It doesn't end in a shootout,
right? It doesn't end in a shootout, right?
It's
next goal wins, and for Western Michigan, I listened to an interview this morning with Western Michigan's coach. He basically just talked about how much the team stayed in the present, right? A lot of people say, "Hey, Western Michigan's a mid-major," but in hockey, like Coach said this morning, he said, basically they play in the SEC of football,
right?
And that's what people don't realize.
But in hockey, right?
Yeah.
So they play out the best teams throughout the season, and so this is their third year that they got into the NCAA tournament. So they've been kind of building toward this. And a shout out to Mike Knubel's son Cam plays on that Western Michigan team, and I did a story on Mike Knubel earlier this year, and he talked about his son and how proud he was of him and be able to go to Western and hoping they could do something special like this. And for them to go out and, get past Denver and then beat, a traditional powerhouse, in Boston was just incredible.
No, it was unbelievable. And I think that is what is so cool about hockey, and especially in the era of the transfer portal and everything like that.
Yeah.
That is changing college hockey still, but it doesn't seem to affect the fact that anybody can win at any time in college hockey. I mean, that's why there was 2 out of 4 teams that had never been there before, and good for Western never being there before and getting the job done completely. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. But, yeah, double overtime, if they would have lost, that would have probably been absolutely crushing to those guys. So I'm happy they were able to get through, and I think they just took that energy. Because a lot of time you get worried playing only 2 days later in a sport like hockey. You play that many minutes on the ice, like you can be really, really tired. So it was awesome to see them come out and light up the scoreboard like they did on Saturday night.
And like you said, Dean, I think talking about just how they got to the national championship win, I mean, they had to beat Denver, the reigning champions, and then they also had to take on Boston, like you said, former powerhouse that was in the national championship, so still continuing those winning traditions and still being able to come out on top. I know they're still partying down in Kalamazoo probably from this win.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think they had the celebration was this afternoon.
Yeah, no, definitely.
The celebration that was like official, not the one that they were doing all the other stuff.
Right. They've been partying since Saturday. Right. The school, the student body. Yeah.
Campus Court looked like it was definitely having a good time. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, well, let's flip the script now from those winners to now a team that's in a bit of a slide, but still early on in the season, the West Michigan Whitecaps. They are still looking to kind of get the season up and going. They've got a 6-game homestand now that kicked off on Tuesday. And so they're going to be playing at home at LMCU Ballpark all weekend long, all throughout Sunday, Easter Sunday. The team, going through a bit of a skid. I believe they've lost 2 or 3 in a row. I can't remember, but a bit of a skid from that hot start that they had. Is this sort of just kind of early season rust finally catching up to them, or maybe something to be a little bit more concerned about for fans?
I think for the Whitecaps, it's just a matter of just kind of finding their footing, right? Getting into a little bit of rhythm. It's still early in the season. Guys are coming off of spring training, so I think Whitecaps have all the necessary assets to be able to compete this year, and it's not like they've been getting blown out.
Right.
They had such a good start to the season. They had some good pitching, some very timely hitting. Max Clark had a big game a few nights ago. But yeah, I just think it's going to take some time for this team to kind of find their rhythm and get into a little groove. And like I said a couple weeks ago, fans coming out to LMCU this year are going to really like watching what the Whitecaps are putting on the field.
In all the games against Lake County, all their losses, Lake County had 5 or more runs. So I think it comes down to a little bit of pitching early on here in the early part of the season. It's kind of been the difference of why they've been losing or winning, because even in some of those games where they give up 5 runs, they still scored 3 or 4 runs. So usually you want those games to be closer than losing 7-3 or 7-4. So I think the pitching staff is probably where they need the most work right now. But yeah, I think it's always hard to tell in baseball early in the season who's actually good and who's not, especially when it comes to minor league level. So I think this homestand can answer a little bit more of those questions. I'm sure that a lot of these guys, even though they call themselves maybe one of the better rosters ever assembled, they're still new playing together at this level, and I'm sure that maybe as the weather warms up, so will their bats, so will their pitching, everything else. It's always really, really tough this time of the year to play in this kind of weather and really dictate who's good and who's not.
Yeah, I was going to say, the crazy weather that we've been having, really, it's not just here in West Michigan, really all throughout the Midwest over the past couple of weeks, cannot make playing outside in a sport that is predominantly played outside much fun, even just practicing, let alone the games.
And a lot of wind, too.
Yes, right.
Very, very windy, and it's going to be going on tonight still, too. So it's over the series.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. For 8 straight days, I was in the 70s and 80s, so I don't know what kind of weather you're talking about here, but I know I wasn't a part of it.
I think we can move on to the next subject. I don't want.
You don't need to brag.
Sorry.
Get it. Yeah, right. All right, well, sticking in the baseball trend, the Tigers currently sitting at first place in the AL Central. They currently have the best winning percentage in all of the American League as of us recording this. They've been kind of doing it on both sides of the ball with pitching, keeping teams at a pretty low run limit, and then also kind of dominating on the scoreboards as well. What do you make of sort of this recent stretch of? I think they've gone 8-2 over their last 10 games. What do you make of this recent stretch? It's kind of the same thing. A little too early to tell, Andy.
Yeah, no, it's been impressive. I think the most impressive thing is in the American League, there's only 3 teams that have a plus run differential right now. The Tigers are the best team with 23, a plus 23 on that. So kind of says everything you need to know. They're pitching very well and they're getting runs, and I think a lot of people were worried about the offense, especially with all the injuries early on. They found a way to scratch across runs and do it their way. They're not doing it the way that everybody has to. I mean, they get the home runs from Kerry Carpenter every here and there. Torkelson's continued to be a great surprise in the power department. Both of them have 5 home runs of the year. But for the most part, it's moving guys up. It's aggressive base running. It's everything they were doing last year that made them win. And right now, it's just going into the season. And their pitching staff right now, it's hard to argue that it's not one of the best in baseball, if not the best. Like, Tarek Skubal's back on track with the start he had against Milwaukee on Monday. He went 7 innings, struck out 9. He's finally starting to locate his pitches a little bit better. Jackson Jobe had a huge start in Minnesota. Got his first major league win. So yeah, they've had a great amount of pitching that's been able to help them get to this point. But I also want to give their offense a little bit of credit too, because that run differential stat doesn't happen unless they're getting those runs. So
yeah, and lots of timely hitting for the Tigers this year. They're manufacturing runs, and they're getting big hits when they need to. It's something like you said, we weren't past years. Tigers have been kind of slow to kind of get their offense going, and now you're seeing production up and down the lineup. Different guys every night are kind of stepping up and producing for them. And then, look at Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty. Reese Olson is probably the only one that's really struggled a little bit right now. But, we'll see. Some of the teams they played, weren't great hitting teams. So we'll see as the season kind of goes on if they can continue to pitch well against the better hitting teams. But no, first American League team to get to 10 wins, super impressive. And first place, you can't ask for anything more for mid-April.
No, and you just said it, April. That's been the struggle month for them in the past. Since even last year's magical run they made, obviously they didn't have a great record going into July before they did that. I think it's been since they missed the playoffs, they haven't had a record over 500 in April. So it's been very tough sledding for them to start a lot of seasons. And I think this year everybody was worried about that happening again with all the early injuries to a lot of starters. I think if you would have said 10-5 to anybody, they couldn't have not taken it right now. And if they're 5 games over 500, going to the end of May when they do start to get some of these guys like Matt Vierling, Parker Meadows, some of those players back, I think that's a great early season success. So
I mean, has there ever been a time that you guys have been this excited, maybe about a Tigers season this early on? Just coming off from last year, what you've seen so far this year. I mean, has there ever been this kind of, I guess, hyper excitement around this team?
I don't think so. You know, I've been a lifelong Tigers fan ever since I was little, and you know, like obviously, I was there for, you know, 6th grade when they won the World Series in '84, and you know, some of the World Series appearances since. You know, obviously disappointing endings for those. But no, you know, you look at the Tigers. You know, the one season they lost 105 or 6 games. So like every year, you didn't really have expectations. You're like, oh, you know, I might watch the Tigers a little bit, but like now they're must-see TV. Right? You know, they are a team that is fun to watch. They have a great pitching rotation, as Andy mentioned. And, you know, expectations are high. And so, like, Comerica is going to be filled throughout the summer. And I think the Tigers are just going to continue to get better and better. And early on, do I think they have a chance to win the American League? Of course. You know, the Yankees, I think, in the power rankings are the only ones kind of above them right now.
The Tigers beat 2 out of 3 games.
Who they beat 2 out of 3 games, yeah. So like I said, it's still early, so we can't get too excited, but I think there's so much optimism for this team, and it's fun to watch.
No, I'll stick to the same thing I said about the Whitecaps. It's like early season baseball, you can never take too much from it. I do think that this pitching's for real because everybody kind of expected it to be that way. What I'm interested to see is if this lineup can keep doing what they're doing. I think it's fair to question. A lot of these guys are playing their first years in the big leagues. Like Dylan Dingler, what he's doing right now as a catcher is unbelievable. And just some of the other guys that they've had fill in. But, yeah, to answer your question about the excitement part, I've been following the Tigers since I've been alive. 2006 was really, like, the first year I, like, fell in love with the Tigers themselves. Baseball's always been my favorite sport. So I'm one of those people that follows them no matter what, no matter how bad they are. Right. And I'm probably one of the older men of my generations. I love listening to the Tigers on the radio. Yeah. So I do it all the time while I work and stuff like that. But, I find it hard to believe that I've had like a season like this probably since like 2012 when they like had Cabrera and Fielder and all that stuff, and everybody was paying attention. Like all you want to do was watch the Tigers every night in the summer, at least if you were somebody like me that likes baseball. So it's awesome to see them doing this right now, and they have names that people are actually starting to like know about and remember. So I was actually my dad's 60th birthday was this past week. And I was in Milwaukee for the game Monday night, and it was pretty crazy. There's like some Milwaukee fans in front of us, and they knew a lot of the names of some of the Tigers players.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And in the last 10 years, that has not been the case. No. So it's been like, ooh, you know. So it's like it's awesome to see that people are actually starting to know who they are, and you know they're talking about Tarek being a Cy Young and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of excitement around Tigers baseball right now.
Always fun going to the opposing team's home venue and then being able to kind of talk to some of the fans of the other team and hear what they have to say. So again, we're still really far out from postseason baseball, but one thing that we're kind of approaching on is, of course, postseason hockey. And the Grand Rapids Griffins have clinched a spot in the Calder Cup playoffs, but now it's all about seeding. They've got 3 games left in the regular season, 2 against the Rockford Ice Hogs and then 1 against the Iowa Wild. Dean, want to start off just talking a little bit about the Griffins kind of leading into the playoffs. They want that 3 seed to obviously avoid the play-in, but that is still a possibility. What are you kind of keeping an eye out for over these next 3 games as the Griffins head into the playoffs?
Yeah, we're looking at the Griffins and just their ability to be consistent, right? And you know they've had some stretches here where they haven't played good hockey, but now they're kind of finding their power kill's been better. You know they're getting some timely goals to get some wins, and you know these last 3 games are going to be important to them to get some confidence going into the playoffs, right? Building some momentum going into the playoffs, and yeah, like you said, Phil, the 3rd seed's so important right now for them to get that. And you know, I think they have the ability to go out and play good hockey now. You know, this next week.
Yeah, no doubt. In the standings, they are still 2 points ahead of Chicago, and they both played the even amount of games. The big difference here that a lot of people might not know, I guess, when it comes to with the seeding part, is if they make the play-in game, so if they're in the 4 and the 5, it's basically guaranteed at this point. I think it's not quite a lock because they're only 6 points ahead of Rockford, but most likely they're not going to lose all 3 games to end the year, so they will probably have the 4 seed. Because the Van Andel scheduled like so many different concerts and stuff coming up here in April, even if they are the 4 seed, they're probably only going to have 1 home game.
Really?
If they are in the play-in, so they would have to go play in Rockford twice. So that's just how it works out in the AHL. Sometimes they take the other stuff they already scheduled over that, and it's really, really tough. So yeah, for the Griffins, they definitely care because if they make an actual series, there's a much better chance they'll at least have 2 home games in front of the home fans here. So they'll be the 3 seeds. They may not be the higher seed,
right?
But it still would be a plus for them for sure to be able to have an actual 5-game series instead of just playing a 3-game series and there's always a lot of space too at this time of the year for this level of hockey. Like they will have one game, then have like 4 days off because again things are planned at arenas and they don't cancel them. So yeah, it's just kind of a crazy time for them. That's why this week is so important. And the ball's in their court now because the Wolves do have the tiebreaker, but being up 2 points if they were to win out, playing Rockford twice and playing Iowa, who are Rockford, they scored 15 goals against a couple weekends ago, and Iowa is one of the worst teams in the AHL. So it's there for them. If they want to do it, they can definitely get the job done, and we'll see what they're able to do this week.
If the playoffs were to start today, though, the Griffins would be taking on the Texas Stars in the division semifinals, and then could ultimately, if they win that series, could ultimately end up facing the Milwaukee Admirals again, and maybe even a little bit of a rematch from last year's Calder Cup playoffs. So definitely something that we're going to be keeping a close eye on over the next week or so. I want to switch now to, again, more playoff action. A lot of sports content kind of coming through. This is honestly, everybody talks about March being one of the better times of the year. Shortly after the NCAA tournament, when all the playoffs kind of start, the Masters comes to town. It's really my favorite time of the season, honestly. Still early season baseball, every team still has a chance, I guess. But now let's focus on the Detroit Pistons a little bit. They're playing the New York Knicks in the first round of the playoffs. We do know that. Before we get into those matchups and kind of how you guys see the series going as it kicks off on Saturday, let's talk about the turnaround that JB Bickerstaff has done to these Detroit Pistons. Last year, they were seemingly the laughingstock of the NBA. They broke so many records that you don't want to break, and now they're the 6th seed, not even battling it out in the play-in. They have a legitimate postseason spot in the playoffs. I mean, Andy, what do you make of this turnaround for JB Bickerstaff, Cade Cunningham, really the whole Pistons organization?
No, it's been unbelievable to see. I think when you have 14 wins the season before, I don't think anybody comes in expecting you to have the amount of wins they have, and I think it says a lot about not just Bickerstaff, but Cade Cunningham. He's fought a lot of injuries in his first couple seasons with them, and I think a lot of people kind of looked at him as just made of glass, maybe not going to be able to get the job done, whatever, and he's been able to put together a mostly healthy season this year and not just be on the court, but also make a huge difference on the court. So it's been awesome to see, but I think the thing that was kind of weird about the end of the season when they were going towards the playoffs, I'm not really sure if they wanted to get the 5 seed. Everybody was talking about how they were playing
Milwaukee.
They would have played Milwaukee. They haven't beat Milwaukee in 2 years as of the loss that they had on Sunday. Yeah, so that, and then also against the Pacers, they haven't beat them this year either, and they're 3-1 against New York.
Yeah.
So I mean, that seems to be the matchup that you'd want to have. Feels like it's the best matchup for them on the floor. So yeah, I think that where they ended up, they couldn't have asked to actually be in a better position. And it's been a little bit of a slide here at the end. I think they've lost 6 or 7 or something like that down the stretch. Don't know how much you want to put into that because Cade didn't play in some of those games. They did have some really tough opponents, but obviously you're in the postseason, you're going to play against tough opponents, and the Knicks are definitely not a pushover. So even if they don't get the job done this series, which I definitely think they have a chance to do, I think you can't not look at this season as being a huge success, and the fact that Detroit basketball has some excitement around it again.
Yeah. Once again, lifelong Pistons fan. I was there in 2004 when Game 4 when the Pistons beat the Lakers to win the championship that year. And, for me, it's the young guys, right? It's Cade has become a legitimate all-star. Jalen Duren has stepped up. Their acquisitions with Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley. Those guys have provided some veteran leadership for some of the young guys, and they've done all this with Jaden Ivey being out for most of the season with an injury, right? But to me, the biggest thing is the Pistons' grit, their defense. They were such a horrible defensive team the past 2-3 years. I couldn't even watch them, all right? I'm a high school basketball coach. I'm big on defense. The Pistons were horrible defensively. And now they've committed Asar Thompson. They just have some gritty defenders who want to play defense and want to get stops. The acquisition of Dennis Schroeder has been huge, one of the best defenders in the league. And the Pistons are fun to watch again, right?
Yeah.
They've kind of become the bad boys, too. If you look at some of the skirmishes they've had, they're not backing down to anybody. And I don't think any team wants to play the Pistons in the playoffs. No one wants to see them. Like you said, they've won 3 or 4 against the Knicks. They've kind of had the Knicks number. So I think that this is a winnable series for them, and I can't wait for Saturday to come for Game 1.
The question I kind of have for both of you guys, I think we can remember 2004, 2008 when it was exciting and people were so into Detroit basketball and that whole thing, and when the going to work Pistons in that era. Now LCA did actually the only playoff series they ever had there was when the Pistons got swept by the Bucks, and that since then there hasn't been a playoff game in this building, but they have that whole nice center and everything. around the stadium. I mean, do you guys expect it to be like filled up for these games? Like, do you think that a lot of people will come out there for the games 3 and 4?
100%. Like you said, they haven't been in the playoffs in so long, right?
Yeah.
They haven't had a playoff win, but this team has generated so much electricity and the atmosphere. I think at the Pistons games has been so electric that I do think that fans are going to come out and because they think the Pistons can win. This isn't a team that they're going to they're going to get swept, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
We think they're going to be competitive. We think that they're going to, play well against the Knicks, and I just think they just have that mix of youthfulness, and veteran, have some veterans, and I just think, combination of that, and like I said, with the defense, I really think I'm picking Pistons in 6.
For sure.
Really? Yeah, I mean, I was going to get to predictions
Sorry,
in a bit.
sorry,
No.
Phil.
I think that's
Pistons in
honestly the
6.
perfect segue. Honestly, I mean, just kind of thinking about. Well, to first answer your question, Andy, I think Detroit having the second. The third and fourth games, I guess, they kind of get to see what the series is kind of shaping up those first 2 games in New York. I think if it's tied or even Detroit up 2-0, Detroit's going to be a madhouse. It's going to be insane. But yeah, I guess let's go into predictions. Dean, you're saying Pistons in 6.
Pistons in 6.
That is very, very bold, I think. Andy, do you kind of share that same sentiment? Do you think it maybe goes 7, or do you think Detroit or even the Knicks kind of wrap it up even earlier?
I do not think Detroit gets swept. I think the Knicks take it in 6.
Knicks in 6, okay.
I don't think that they're quite there yet. I believe in this team, and I like a lot of things, but the regular season is so different from the playoffs and the NBA nowadays. It's a lot different. And that's kind of the reason that what actually sparked my question is just there's so much critique around the NBA and the way it's being played today with the 3-point shot and everything else. And I just kind of wondered, I guess, what you guys thought if it would, if the city itself would just be
I think they're going to embrace them
to get the vibe, for
I
sure.
think they really are.
Just because of the current state of the NBA and some of the critics that it has right now. And they're fair too. But I definitely think that Detroit will show out for it. And I think what you said, Phil, has a huge part in that. If they can at least come back tied, I think that makes a huge difference.
They can steal one in New York.
If they go down 2-0, I find it hard to believe that they're going to be able to do a lot in this series, but I think that the crowd too would take a little bit of a hit. So I did see today they're not selling tickets to anybody outside of Michigan, Ohio, and somewhere else. So I mean, there's obviously a resale site so people can still buy them. But
I expect to see Spike Lee there. Little Caesars Arena for sure.
There still will be Knicks fans in the building. They always try to do stuff like that, and it doesn't actually work. But well, it's still really cool to see them like trying to do everything they can to make it a home court environment. I think the Pistons have done such a good job this year, and they deserve to have that home support. And I think it'll make a big difference this series if they get it.
Yeah, guys, the only thing I'm really concerned about is the Knicks playoff experience, right?
Yeah.
The Pistons don't have many. Tobias has some with Philly. Tim Hardaway has some. Malik Beasley has some. But, the Knicks have obviously made it to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple years ago. So, that might be my only concerning thing about my prediction is the Knicks have that playoff experience, but maybe with a young team like the Pistons, it won't even matter.
These guys are still together, but the losing more games here towards the end of the season, I think that also could play a role as well. So they either do something I really don't expect, or I guess we'll see. But I think it'll be the best series of the first round.
Oh, definitely.
I do think that.
Yeah, well, I guess kind of staying on that same point, obviously you both kind of disagree on who's going to come out on top, but you still think it's going to go 6 games. Do you think it's going to be a very competitive series all throughout? I mean, are we talking maybe multiple overtime games in this series in those 6 games? Are we maybe expecting maybe it's going to be a little bit more one-sided for some of these games? I mean, you picture the Pistons from the past and the Pistons now, and they're kind of getting, like Dean was saying, that gritty mindset again. And the New York Knicks are the New York Knicks. They've got all this legacy. They play in one of the most historic buildings in the arena, but they also are a gritty team. I mean, I kind of expect this to be a low-scoring series, 80s and 90s, honestly. I would be kind of shocked if teams were deep in the 100s during this series. You guys kind of feel that same way?
That's what the Pistons need to do if they do want to win this series. And I do expect every game to be close. I don't think there's a way the Pistons get smoked off the floor.
Right.
Just the way they played all year and how physical they are and everything else. There's no way they're getting blown out like that. Again, I think it's huge to set the tone early and get one win in New York. But I think most of these games will be close all the way throughout. I can't see this team not giving effort. They play for each other. I think that's one of the more special things about this team. Again, it wouldn't be a surprise to me if it did swing the other way and go for the Pistons. But I think that playoff experience that you mentioned, that's kind of what I think overall is going to take over in the end. Because again, they're 3-1 against them in the regular season, the Pistons that is, and that's great. But the Knicks are. This team was paid to win some games, and obviously everybody knows New York basketball has had a lot of critics and everything else, and they've had a lot of players come through that haven't been as good as they were supposed to be. So it would be a a very, very bad year in New York if they lost
Right.
the Pistons in
When
the
you
first
get,
round.
when you get
So,
Towns and you have Jalen Brunson.
yeah,
some
exactly.
Of those guys.
Like, I mean, I get it. Names aren't everything, but in the
Yes.
NBA, they definitely mean more than any other sport. So, yeah, it's tough for me to imagine the Pistons getting over them in this situation, but I think these games will be close.
Yeah, I agree, Andy. I think they're going to be very competitive games. Phil, to your point, I think very low scoring as well. Lots of defense being played out. I don't see these being high scoring games because if they are high scoring games, the Pistons are going to not come out on the winning end.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The Pistons, when they don't play defense, that's when they struggle a little bit. And so, but if they can stick to what they've been doing all season long and kind of play with that, youthful exuberance and that intensity, then I think that we're going to be good.
Okay. Real quick before we do move on, who is your X factor in this series, either on the Knicks or on the Pistons? It could even be a coach if you want. Andy, we'll start with you. Who is your X factor for this series?
I like Jalen Duren. I think that if he can stay out of foul trouble, which has kind of been the thing that's kind of been a bugaboo for him this whole season, whenever he picks up two quick ones, seems to be a problem for the Pistons. I think they're going to need him inside to be able to defend some of the players that the Knicks have in the interior. And if he can stay in the game, it seems like they flow a lot better on offense overall as well. So I definitely think that obviously Cade is he is the person that most people I think would pick. Obviously, if he doesn't do well, the Pistons aren't going to do well. But if I had to go away from the obvious pick, I think it would definitely be Jalen Duren.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Malik Beasley.
I like that too a lot.
Best 3-point shooter in the league this season. Led the league in 3 points made, and his outside shooting. What happens with the Pistons is Cade's able to penetrate and kick out to Beasley, and he knocks down those shots. So I think getting him open opportunities and just his veteran leadership, right? I think that's going to play a big factor in this series as well, and just his ability to knock down the 3-point shot.
All right, guys. Well, before we kind of wrap things up today, we obviously want to talk a little bit about the NFL draft. It is coming up next week. We're going to probably do a lot more coverage in next week's show. But as far as this goes, we're going to be watching the first round before next week's show airs. So as far as the first round goes, let's focus on that. I want to start off with the first overall pick. The Tennessee Titans own it. Who do you expect to go number one overall? There's a lot of talk right now, but I think it's starting to kind of close in on who might actually be number one.
Yeah, I think the favorite has to be Cam Ward.
Yeah.
He's an overwhelming favorite to be selected number one. I think Cam has all the tools. I think Tennessee is obviously searching. Will Levis was not a great quarterback last year. And Cam Ward, his ability to throw the ball and his arm strength and, run sometimes, I think that he will be selected number one in the NFL draft.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine them not taking a quarterback, so it's either going to be him or Shadur. But to me, it's more, will either one of these picks work out for these guys?
Yeah.
I don't know. The quarterback class isn't great, and if you need a quarterback, that's why some of these players are getting paid what they're getting paid in free agency, like Sam Darnold and others in that category, because I don't think that people really believe in the quarterbacks in this draft, at least the ones that need to take them that early. So I think it will be Cam Ward, but I don't know if it's going to end up being much better than Will Levis for him.
I think it kind of depends on the team that is actually doing the drafting.
Yeah.
So that's the number one overall pick. Lions have a pick in the first round, a little bit more in the back, which is not always the case. Over the past couple of years, usually the Lions have one of the top picks, but now they're slowly in the back as they have made back-to-back playoff
It's not
appearances.
a holiday in Michigan anymore.
Right, exactly.
Draft,
Yeah.
Right.
But with all the talent in Detroit and coming off back-to-back playoff appearances, now you're losing your two coordinators. There is a lot of changeover that is probably going to be happening for the Lions, but who do you think is that sort of pick in the first round that can really help this team kind of get over that hump and maybe even reach the Super Bowl, which I know a lot of people have been kind of banking on for the past two seasons?
Well, I feel like there's a couple different options because I think they need a couple different things. Obviously, with the offensive line maybe having some changes. I've seen a lot of stuff about Gray Zabel, the offensive lineman for North Dakota State. He's a player that I've seen in a couple of mock drafts that may go to them if they decide to go that route. I also like Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher from Texas A&M, because I think everybody knows that Detroit still probably needs more on the defensive line. It still ended up hurting them, especially a lot in that playoff game against Washington when Jaden Daniels was able to do what he did against them. But there's obviously a couple other guys, Walter Nolan or Jalen Walker, both defensive linemen. One's an edge rusher. They're probably going to go too high for Detroit to get them, but I think if they were to fall, they would definitely take that opportunity and do it. I think the other thing to think about, because obviously Brad Holmes has done this in so many past drafts, will he trade up to try to get another pick? Because obviously he loves his draft picks.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like that's something that Brett Holmes loves to do is trade up, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did it again in this draft. You know, there's so much depth in this draft.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, which can be a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, because the Lions are drafting so late. But you know, if Brett Holmes targets someone and he likes them, kind of like with Jahmyr Gibbs,
Yeah.
he's gonna do whatever it takes to kind of get the guy that they want to fit the system. And you know, obviously they've done so well in the draft the past 3-4 years, and so I trust Brad Holmes to make the right decision and just do something to bolster the depth, or you know, find a starter out there, you know, diamond in the rough, whatever the case may be. But you know, trust in Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes to go out and make the right decision.
I don't know how you can't right now. I mean, I guess you could argue like Ennis Rakestraw hasn't really panned out yet or been able to play.
He was hurt though.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like hard to really say that he's messed up in the draft yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to trust Brad Holmes with whatever he decides to do.
Yep.
Right. I will say that is kind of one of the nicer parts about having a later on pick is that it's maybe a little bit less pressure to kind of make that big swing at a guy because you know if you have the first overall pick, kind of need a guy that's going to change your entire team and make sure you don't get that first overall pick again next year. So a lot of pressure, a little bit less pressure for the Lions. So we'll see what they decide to do next week. And kind of on that same vein, you know, we obviously want to support all of our Michigan athletes that could potentially hear their names called. That's probably one of the cooler moments in an NFL player's life is hearing their name called, being able to walk across the stage, greet Roger Goodell, all that good stuff. Is any players in particular, Dean, I want to start with you because you've got some actual Michigan natives that could potentially hear their names called. Who are you kind of monitoring during the NFL draft?
Yeah, a couple guys that most people around here have maybe heard of in high school. One is Isaac Tesla, and as a junior, he helped lead Union Christian to the state championship. He started out his career at Hillsdale, and then he finished up at Arkansas. But he had just an incredible NFL combine, wide receiver, and so you know I think he's kind of a dark horse, and you know someone who's kind of slated to go in the mid rounds. But yeah, like I said, his ability to perform well at the combine really kind of lifted his draft stock, and you know it's gonna be interesting to see where he lands. Another guy, Spencer Holstig, played at South Christian. He's a guard. And he started out at Purdue and then finished up here at UCLA. And he's kind of projected to be kind of in the later rounds. But, you know, two local guys who could find a spot on an NFL roster.
Both come from pretty good programs, too. They're in high school. They're consistently good at football now, so yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And kind of on the flip side, Michigan, the University of Michigan, the Wolverines, they've got a lot of hype around a couple of draft prospects, some projected to go as high as even top 5, honestly. We were talking a little bit earlier, Dean, you had a little bit of a trivia nugget for us that Michigan has never had more than 3 players drafted in the first round, and many mock drafts are predicting around 4 Wolverines to be selected. Andy, I mean, any particular standout to you as far as Wolverines going into Thursday's draft?
Yeah, I think if Will Johnson would have played more this past season without the injury, I think he would have been maybe the guy that even went higher than Mason Graham. But it's hard to not say it's Mason Graham right now just because of the way he was able to end the season. And he kind of had a little bit of a lull in the middle, I feel like. People were starting to critique a little bit more, but he finished really strong. And I think he said in one of his interviews, like people asked about where he should go in the draft, and he said, well, watch the tape against Ohio State.
Right.
So he's like, the proof's there. So that was the team that ended up winning the national championship. So, yeah, Mason Graham's a great player. I think every Lions fan would dream of him getting drafted to the Lions, but I don't think they're going to be able to trade up that high to get that pick. But obviously him and Aiden Hutchinson going on the same team would be pretty insane. But yeah, no, Mason Graham's definitely one. But I think Colston Loveland is the one that is a little bit sneakier because Michigan obviously had a little bit of trouble at quarterback this past season. And Colston Loveland was one of those players that when they did have J.J. McCarthy, he excelled and was really good. But even with a bad quarterback this year, he still found a way to get some touchdowns and some big plays. So I think he's maybe the best tight end in the draft, if not the best. And I think Colston Loveland's definitely one to watch getting drafted, maybe even higher than where he's slated on the 20th pick right now.
And I don't know if anybody watching has ever played college football 25, but Colston Loveland, dark horse tight end for your ultimate team. I've had him all season long, have not been able to get rid of him. He's just that good. So see if that translates, and hopefully we hear as many Michigan names called during the 2025 NFL draft. We're going to be keeping it. We're going to keep it tuned in. We're going to be watching the draft and obviously bringing you guys our thoughts next week when we discuss a little bit more about the NFL draft as well as all the other sports going on in West Michigan. This was a big one, but I want to thank Dean and Andy for stopping by today and really helping us break down all of the different scenarios going into the Griffins postseason and also the NFL draft and the Tigers and Whitecaps. Really everything. We covered it all today. So again, thanks so much for you guys for stopping by.
No problem.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah,
Love
of
it.
course.